workstream review. So we're just going to run in order. So we're going to kick off with Dean giving a summary of his session. Then I'll give a summary of what we covered on processes for successful new service commercialization. And then we'll finish with Mark on looking at how we create a service innovation pipeline. So I don't know if you want to stand up here or you just grab a mic and walk around. Over to you, Dean.
Okay. I'll use this one. It's easy enough. Okay, so just to quickly go through the consumer legacy services work stream. We're talking about how to get a little bit more revenue margin differentiation on traditional core services for operators, and split that between two groups, between those looking at voice and telephony and those looking at data and SMS and also USSD. I'm not going to go through all of the points, but quick roundup on the voice side. We were talking about how can we improve the user experience. The sort of traditional dialer is pretty weak, and if there's ways to enhance the sort of mechanisms of actually making and receiving calls without changing the underlying network transport, that has lots of upside. So we're talking about whether you can provide context on why is someone calling, maybe an SMS just in advance of the call, or if you do have smartphone users, maybe using an app or instant messenger type approach where people can decide if they want to take a call or not. Thinking about ways of blocking voice spam or sending things directly to voicemail. One I've been wanting to have for a while is thinking, if I have an inbound telemarketing call, why can't I hit a button which then charges them, $2 a minute to speak to me, and I'll do a rev share with the telco. I'd happily do a rev share with BT or Vodafone, and if I could just earn money listening to someone trying to sell me something I don't want. Probably works for PR people as well. Temporary numbers came up, although I do have this concern I raised earlier about temporary numbers at the same time as other people trying to use numbers as identifiers. We have two interesting and conflicting trends there, which is going to be quite fun to reconcile. Voice messaging, recording, and if you're going to do recording for consumers, there probably needs to be some way of alerting the other person. A lot of issues around local rules here. Incidentally, there's an app, an internet app called Talko, which has quite a few of these things built into it, with a nice UI and the ability to actually thread conversations by title. So you can have, I was talking with James Bodie yesterday, sort of late for the airport, with about 5 text messages, 3 voice messages, and 1 recorded two-way call, which I thought was quite neat. So there are quite a few things there, but it's about thinking of how can we add context and usability to the phone service, because we don't actually make any effort to increase phone service usage. In fact, we don't even use the voice network for things other than phone calls. When in fact, when it was invented by Alexander Graham Bell, we didn't know the purpose of the telephone. People thought it was to be used to listen to music. They thought it was going to be used for having people read the news to you at a distance. And in fact, we've boiled it all down to this one thing of person A calls person B, when there's a lot more you could do. Oh, and video came up, and there was an interesting set of questions as to how and where video acts as either a replacement or whether service providers can offer video themselves. On the data services and USSD, we talked about looking at using them for advertising and ad inventory, and whether you can, within a given country, cooperate between the carriers to offer unified ad inventory to advertisers. Good example from Axiata about what they're doing in Indonesia there. Location-based services. That cropped up as something which sounds like a good plan up to a point, but has a range of issues such as how you deal with opt-ins, and who stores the opt-in details of which things you've opted in for, and make sure that you actually comply with that, or the developers comply with those rules. And you needed probably a trusted party in the loop. And Yeah, that one, also along with, I'll talk about SIMS in a second, came up, there's one thing that came across both of these with legacy services, and that's legacy regulation. I think maybe, Alan, this is possibly something to, if we can touch on this afternoon or another time, is regulate. As far as we know, there are no regulators here, are there? Any regulators? People from telecoms ministries? No. Yeah, well, there should be. Basically, telecoms regulators don't understand any of this stuff and what's going on, and that this thing called a phone call is actually going to be, whether it's a phone or SMS or a telecoms network, is an application platform. And virtually no regulators have started to think what the implications of that are. Or either in terms of, you don't want them to create new rules, but there's a lot of existing rules which get in the way. So we heard from Telecom Italia was saying that they looked at doing a USSD API, but they realised they were going to have to do lawful intercept on USSD, which would have doubled the cost of the deployment, so they didn't do it. And that was a real eye-opener. And that's where, either because of regulations or the internal processes of carriers of being ultra-cautious, and there's someone whose job it is to say no, there needs to be a workaround there. And I think this regulatory issue is going to come back again and again, particularly if we start to try and do new voice applications. One last one we also talked about was how to leverage the SIM card for ID. One of the questions that comes out there is whether you're prepared to upgrade your entire fleet of SIM cards for all your users from the existing ones to new ones capable of doing better identification capabilities. People are talking about 108K SIMs, for example. I think that probably sums it up. It's quite a lot got thought through. Anyway, cheers.
That's great. Thanks so much, Dean. So we were talking around processes for successful new service commercialization, and we were taking two views, one being a telco view, the other being a sort of developer partner view. Now, same structure as all the other work streams, kicked off with a panel. The composition of the panel, we had a couple of operators, one in a mature, slow market, one in a emerging, fast market, and then a range of traditional vendors, as well as, as I'd mentioned, Appiday is presenting a very interesting model in terms of they do go direct with their platform and we saw with Evanos was a great use case. But can work through operators as well. I think that sums up for a lot of partners where they are. It's a question mark around which route they can take. So what I've done, just to keep it short so we can get to the closing panel, is I just put a couple of slides together to help explain some of the issues. I think the first one is a classic dichotomy that exists, that telcos, when they're looking at this, is, oh, wow, look at what a great enabler we can be. Just, come on, partner, use my stuff, use my stuff. Well, guess what? A lot of the partners, a lot of the developers, what they want the telco to be is a channel to market. So we've got this dichotomy where this telco wants to basically be an enabler, and then, you go away and sell all this stuff that I've enabled on you. While we're in this situation where, unfortunately, the reason a lot of partners want to work with the telco is because they actually are quite a useful channel to market. So I think that, now, as a channel to market, they're happy to use the telco's enabler. But the primary focus is on being a channel to market. So I think that's something that, even today, the industry hasn't really got its head round. And we brought it up yesterday. All the go-to-market issues that telcos need to solve to be a good partner for the third parties. So this, I think, was one of the dichotomies that was raised. And on the developer partner view, this was a direct question that was asked by one of the telcos and very directly answered by the developers. Now, as you would imagine, it's been a common theme. There's been a lot of discussion around the barriers, the challenges in terms of launching new services. And I'm just taking what Mac drew up on a piece of paper. So we've got these dimensions in terms of technology, that changes in months. You've got the market, adapting to those changes in technology and services, within a year, you can see significant changes in customer behavior. And we focus a lot on tech. WebRTC, 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 it's just a piece of technology. And as we can see, its impact on the market is far slower than the changes we're seeing within the technology. And then we look at, customers are doing this now, WhatsApp, in terms of number of customer engagement. We don't really talk about the, as you look at it, the left-hand side, in terms of the organizational investments, the phases of organizational investment. We're going through an LTE phase at the moment, and that takes years, a 3 to 5 year. But there's another, and this comes back to the 3 points that I keep hammering on about in all my consulting engagements, which is people, process, and technology. And it's not just people in terms of skills and all the HR issues. There's this thing up here, career, the myth of career, basically, that's used by organizations to control people's behavior. It's a 30-year thing. And for a lot of product managers that tend to be in the mid-40s, that basically are working within a telco, that have a family, that are settled in the country of where they're living, fear of failure is a massive thing. Because once they're seen to fail, that's it. Their career sidelined. They'll not get the juicy projects. The next round of layoffs, they'll be out. And of course, by the time they're in the mid-40s, and they've mostly spent 20-odd years working in that telco, they've reached a level of incompetence that they're unemployable by any other organization. So that's why they're so adverse to failure. And that's something that we really don't appreciate in terms of a lot of projects that are involved in. We've got this amazing idea. Everybody, the SVPs go, this is great, Alan. Let's do it. We've got the partner. Let's execute. You've shown us the business model. And then a year goes by and still nothing's happened. And it's because, you know what? We have the inertia of the industry, but we also have a significant inertia in terms of people, their careers, and fear of failure. And that really sums up where we were discussing this fear of failure leading to inertia. But of course, on the developer panel, we were like, okay, so how do we solve it? Because it's geeks, we always love solving problems. And one of the things we see is always, it's like, focus, 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 focus. One service, just focus on one service. But actually, Ventura, in the situation that he's created for himself in Dialogue, he actually loves failure. He wants to see as much failure as possible because he's got a portfolio of services. He's got partners. The more failure he sees is because more services are getting launched, more learning, more success. So actually, don't focus, focus, focus. Actually, if you're going to do something, have a bit of a portfolio there. Even a small portfolio of 3 or 4. So what you're doing is you're spreading your bets, so you're avoiding this situation where, I've got this service, we've got this issue, it could fail, let's defer, because guess what? Revenues aren't going to change that much next year, and this revenue impact is going to be so damn slow. And then the other point, and this came up again from the developers in terms of what they want to see from telcos, one of their requirements. And actually, Christoph from Huawei raised this, and some of the things that they're doing within the Chinese market is engaging the end customers directly, whether it's enterprise, whether it's consumer, and working with them, brainstorming, understanding how these capabilities can be used to solve the problems that the customers are facing in their everyday life. Now, at the Service Delivery Innovation Summit in London a month or 2 back, Sasha from Deutsche Telekom was showing the process and the model they use for engaging their end customers in these types of discussions. So very much engaging customers. So you have this really neat idea, and it could be a click to call. It could be a something very dumb. Just a WebRTC API that you're looking, or a WebRTC template that we saw Senate showing. You then talk to customers, engage them, discuss, so they can understand what this newfangled thing is, that what this WebRTC template can actually do, and then they discuss and understand how that could be applied to the problems they face in engaging their customers, working with partners, or just day-to-day operations. From that, then, you've got a real hare to chase for this portfolio of services. And it's all done in a lightweight way, because in a lot of cases, a lot of these apps are already running up in the cloud, so you can actually sort of within a couple of weeks have something that an enterprise can be playing with. So that go-to-market, that channel to market is very important, and telcos need to understand how to harness that. Because I'll be frank, if you're responsible for innovation, generally you're a geek, you're on the geek side. If you were to go to some of the telcos customers directly and start talking about potential services, guess what? You're going to find yourself fired. We need a way in which the digital services, new services team can get some of the biz dev salespeople that have credibility with the telcos end customers and engage them in this conversation so that we can start generating, a simple path to launch new services where there's a portfolio that's been launched on a sort of monthly, bi-monthly, every 3 months basis, so that, guess what, most of them are going to fail, and fail for a whole variety of reasons. But hopefully we can get 1 or 2 that succeed, so we can avoid this fear of failure to actually get telcos innovating. So that, I hope, summarizes what we covered. For the sort of guys that were in Workstream 5, is there anything else you'd like to add? If not, let me hand over to Mark, and Mark's going to cover Workstream 6, looking at how we can create a service innovation pipeline. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Hey, so thanks, Alan, and I also want to specifically thank both the panel we had in Workstream 6, but also everyone who joined in, because we had a fantastic bunch of people. We had a bunch of very provocative and interesting conversations, arguments, some might say, and we did decide we could have started with beer at 5 and gone till 5 in the morning and drunk the bar dry. Hey, so our topic was all about how we can use, everyone agrees TADHack was a phenomenally successful event, and Alan, more than one person is saying, give us a date for June in 2015, please. Soon? But our topic was about how can we use sort of TADHack and that momentum and that community to create a service innovation pipeline. And one of the things I asked everyone in the room to do was to kind of take off their company or their business hats or their job hats and think about from a sense of community. What we really want to do is kind of create a rising tide of telco application services that can float all the boats. We really tried to look at, well, what will it take? Where are the gaps where there is something that's stopping commercialization? We want to look at the carriers who are saying, well, hey, $100 million or $1 million isn't the cost of paper clips in this company, so if you come with a service that might make $1 million, well, we just don't care. To actually get them to think about, well, how can I use this community, this bunch of very, very smart folks who are doing things to create and actually get them interested in service innovation. So a couple of things we spoke about in the panel session was around incentivizing carriers in that sort of way to actually get them thinking about launching services, thinking about innovation, and thinking about working with service innovation partners. And one of the challenges we came up with is that carriers, what makes carrier A and market X incentivized to look at this can be radically different in a different part of the world in a different market. And trying to be very general about what will incentivize a carrier to be focused on service innovation was going to be a bit of a challenge. The other thing we discussed was that carriers really primarily want innovation in their own ecosystem, not necessarily in the industry. And that's a bit of inertia. That's a bit of, well, we want to own everything. We want to own our community. We want to monetize our community and make sure our competitors don't get access to our community. And we all know in telecoms that's been an example of failure. The other thing we spoke about was the sorts of things when you talk to small companies, startups, folks with new ideas trying to build and commercialize things, was to really look at, the business and network effects you can have as barriers to entry for your competitors, not just the technology, and specifically not the technology. That being said, we then broke into tables, and table 1 was all about how can we use TADHack as an innovation showcase? And I want to thank Ben, who actually summarized a bunch of points for us on this one. And these are the 3 things that that table came up with we need to do. One is create a demo environment, non-production networks, a place where developers can actually not so much develop and hack around, but actually demonstrate on a non-production but sort of service-enabled network, the right SIMs and things like that. Interestingly enough, we both had Truephone and Swisscom in that table, who would both be very supportive of that sort of environment, which is fabulous. The other thing, and there was some common themes we came up with across all the tables, primarily around education and communication, and this is one of them. Really looking to identify within the community who within the carriers being one of the key enablement pieces to actually monetizing services, needs to be able to see demos and ensure the attention of those demos. Using the community as a way to be able to help folks coming out of the TADHack pipeline to be able to say, hey, look, we should talk to Mac, or we should talk to so-and-so, we should talk to, hang on, no, that might work really well in the Philippines, we'll go talk to that person. Being able to sort of help as a community to share that information to help direct developers to the right folks. The other thing, which is, again, I've got an asterisk against it because it came up elsewhere as well, we think as a community to create a venue for demoing the innovations from TADHack somewhere beyond TADHack. We spoke about TechCrunch Disrupt a couple of times, and the idea to be able to create a showcase event where people, I mean, we're the choir, we all believe this stuff. We need to get the other people in the room to show the really cool things that we've all seen this week. And to talk about the economics of putting them up and the value propositions it'll create. So that was table one. I thank Ben and his colleagues for helping us out there. They did a great job. Table two, we spoke about TAD best practices, things that we can do as a community to really help that service pipeline adopt a set of best practices towards commercialization and sustainability. And again, it comes back to communication and education. One of the things we spoke about as a first point was really helping to create sort of like a bit of a matrix, a bit of a focus to allow the classification of both developers and solutions. Helping developers understand that if they're doing something that might be very specifically towards enterprise, walking into a particular part of a carrier that just deals with innovation might not be the smartest or the fastest way to go. Inevitably, talking to the CTO's office is usually not the way to go. And really create almost like a bit of a matrix, a self-select sort of, this is to help people categorize their solutions and where they should be focusing their attention. When you're a small company, you can't walk into a big carrier with 35,000 people without a focus. You've got to have that focus, and helping young folks coming, or young developers doing things in TADHack to have that focus was we felt was an important communication and education exercise. The second thing is, help segment the carrier. Look to ways in which we can identify specific points of ingress in different networks around the world that are applicable to that particular segment or focus group, focus market of that thing. Identify who might be the API platform partners that work with a specific carrier. For example, it might be great to get into Etisalat. It might be useful to know that Tropo are in there. There might be a gap or an enabling piece you can work with to do that. Also, maybe knowing what sort of products and things that a particular carrier is interested in. What is interesting to a product manager in a particular carrier this year will be very different next year. Trying to understand what those trends are, what things are, and communicate them back to the TADHack community. Say, hey, we know there's a lot of interest in, for example, connected home projects. So let's have a connected home award at 2015, as an example. Connected car we spoke about with some of our North American friends are all over this year. Next year it'll be something different. Being able to communicate those needs and objectives of the industry to the TADHack participants to allow them to sort of be able to focus their solutions and their development effort we thought was really important. Third point from table two, define the market. Look at the geographic needs. We spoke about how every carrier in every market in the world has different needs and requirements based on its number of smartphones, different types of services, cultural things, billing, value-added things they need to be able to do, and helping developers in TADHack be able to look at very specific ways they can enter, again, focus, to be able to identify a particular market that might be much more receptive to their product or service than potentially their own home market. Finally, we had a fantastic table three led by Dinesh, some really specific recommendations, again, all about communication and education. Let's have a TAD ambassador program where we try to find the ambassadors or the champions inside all the folks we want to get into, educate them about TADs and the value that this community, not just the individual companies, that the community brings to their job. Again, make a cool, really funky demo event that really pulls and engages. It's something that carriers are going to want to attend because that's where the innovation lives. Again, we spoke about sort of like a TechCrunch. We spoke about a number of things around TAD mentorship, being able to use some of the smarts in this room and in the broader TADS community in geographic or particular technology areas both on a business side and a technology side, to be able to be available to mentor and advise young companies, young startups doing things in the in TADHAC. And finally, a neat idea, I think, is to actually look at trying to create a TAD incubator program. Not necessarily a single physical place, but one which might be able to be overlaid amongst the many incubators and co-working spaces around the world. People walk into, for example, into Y Combinator, and telecoms is like number 20 on the list of things they'll look at. So someone from TADHAC maybe isn't going to find the best receptive audience there. But if there's a program where we can say, well, look, we can work with almost like a virtual incubator overlaid on physical incubators. Again, I want to thank both our panelists, who are amazing, and our participants, who are awesome. Thank you very much.